The New York Times writes manliness, prestige and cash. How military service is sold on Russian TV. A supermarket security guard, a taxi driver, a guy at the gym. The Russian government has a message for all of them. Aren't you a man? Last spring, the Russian military kicked off a new recruitment drive for the war in Ukraine, seeking to replace tens of thousands of dead and wounded without having to resort to an unpopular draft. For the last 4 months, the New York Times has tracked how the campaign played out on Russian state television and social media, and found that recruitment messages focused on the Kremlin's official rationale for the invasion and existential threat from the West against Russians played only a supporting role. The Washington Post writes state lawmakers move to ban Chinese land ownership. In Washington, the White House and federal lawmakers are pursuing ways to constrain Chinese-owned businesses like TikTok amid a bipartisan push to limit China's reach. Now state legislators have embraced a novel, locally focused tactic aimed at China's domestic investments: restrictions on Chinese land ownership. Lawmakers in 33 states have introduced 81 bills this year that would prohibit the Chinese government, some China-based businesses and many Chinese citizens from buying agricultural land or property near military bases, according to a Washington Post analysis of data compiled by Asian Pacific American Justice, an advocacy group. A dozen of the bills are now law in states such as Alabama, Idaho and Virginia. USA Today writes flooding on sunny days? How El Niño could disrupt weather in 2024. It doesn't take a storm to cause ruinous flooding along our coasts, and climate troublemaker El Niño is expected to worsen this so-called high tide flooding over the next year, federal scientists said in a report released Tuesday. Last year, the trend for this type of flooding continued as the nation continued to break records. In fact, 8 locations along the east and west coasts experienced record high tide flooding last year, a trend that's expected to persist in 2024, according to the report, which was prepared by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Los Angeles Times writes when Hillary hit their small road, no one was prepared for the destruction. As Tropical Storm Hillary swept through Cathedral City, similar terrifying scenes played out up and down Horizon Road, a short, usually tranquil stretch lined with palm trees and rock and dirt front yards able to withstand the scorching desert heat. Across from the Mendiolas, a family was trapped as its one-story home flooded. 2 houses down, terrified elderly residents were stranded in a board and care home. Chicago Tribune writes White Sox clean house in front office, firing GM Rick Hahn and Executive VP Ken Williams. In the midst of a dismal season, the Chicago White Sox relieved Executive Vice President Ken Williams and General Manager Rick Hahn of their responsibilities effective immediately. New York Post writes NYC teacher charged with raping, sexually abusing 14-year-old student. A Queens's middle school teacher was arrested Tuesday for allegedly raping and sexually abusing a 14-year-old student, police said. Melissa Rawkenzies, a 33-year-old teacher at Corona Arts and Sciences Academy, was arrested over the disturbing allegations around 10:30 a.m. in Queens, according to cops. It wasn't clear whether the alleged rape happened on or off campus. Rawkenzies was charged with rape, criminal sexual act and acting in a manner injurious to a child less than 17 years old, the NYPD said. Newsday writes 3-year-old girl shot in chest after homicide suspect fires on police in Ridge apartment complex. The girl had just been given a bath when Gary Jones allegedly opened fire on detectives who were investigating him in connection with a June homicide in Central Islip. A bullet pierced a shared wall of the apartments and hit the girl in the chest, Suffolk County Police said. The Denver Post writes public schools still don't have air conditioning. 17 will close early Wednesday because of it. The first week of classes for Denver public schools has gotten off to a hot start, but one that could impact academic performance for the students in more than 40 schools that still don't have air conditioning. Record August heat forced the district to release students early this week as classes resumed for the 2023-2024 school year. Students at 14 schools went home around lunchtime on Tuesday. San Francisco Chronicle writes 49ers, high-stakes gamble on kicking game starting to look dicey. The San Francisco 49ers parted with dependable kicker Robbie Gould and put their faith in rookie Jake Moody. In win now mode, they can't afford growing pains. BBC writes India's Chandrayaan-3 attempts first ever South Pole moon landing. India's Chandrayaan-3 is just a couple of hours away from hopefully making a soft landing on the lunar surface later today. But other countries are also interested in exploring the moon's mysteries. As we've been reporting, earlier this week Russia's unmanned Luna 25 spacecraft crashed into the moon after spinning out of control.